everyone, my name is Anusha and welcome to the MIT ID podcast, a medium where we get people from MIT ID on board and talk to them about design, culture, work, college, and a lot more. So for this episode, we have our very own head of department of ISFD, that is Interior Space and Furniture Design, Amit Deshmukh sir. And this time we've got him on board to talk about what ISFD is all about, his experience through the whole college, since he is, I think, the one and only HOD which has been in college for the longest time, and how he tackles the several students that he has met throughout his whole journey. So I'm going to pan the camera towards him for him to introduce himself a little, and then we'll go ahead and start the podcast. Hello, sir. Welcome.
Yeah. Hi, I'm Amit Deshmukh. So I'm basically an architect, industrial designer, and I have an industry experience, including the academics, of around 24 years. And it's been 18 years I have been with this institute, almost I would say from the inception of the institute, and it's been an amazing journey. About myself, I am a Pakka Pethi Puneri and I'm passionate about spaces. I'm passionate about doing things with hand, so materials, and I'm passionate about board games. So those are the areas that I work with. And I think we will discuss about, as she rightly said, about ISFD, about my journey, and about many other things as well.
Lovely, sir. So firstly, it's amazing to have you on the podcast.
Thank you
So much for accepting the invitation. Now, the one thing that all the students want to actually know to start the podcast is what inspired you to get into the field of interiors and furniture and spaces in general.
Okay, so I think spaces is what I more like about. So I think I was more passionate about creating spaces, and that inspired me to get into architecture. So I come from a school which is called as Nayan Prabodhini in Pune, which is a very different kind of, which has a different kind of a learning pedagogy that school has. So in my 8th standard only, we were given certain projects. So where I had to go to certain villages and we actually mapped the village and built the villages. So that was my first hands-on experience for making a model of an entire village. And that kind of inspired me to look at spaces and things like that. I think there also my skill sets of observing and feeling space kind of initiated, and that triggered much more inclination towards getting into architecture. And after architecture, we have an internship. So at that point I felt that, okay, practicing architecture is more getting into corporation plans and things like that. So I felt that I need to design is my inclination. So that triggered a journey into industrial design, wherein I think most of the product design or the space design project which I handle rotated around children. So later on also, when I kind of practiced my own, I worked, I concentrated more onto products with children. So I used to very funnily call myself, if there is something called as a pediatric designer, I am that. Because I love designing toys, I love designing furniture. So that's how I translated into furniture, wherein some of my interior projects I did for nursery schools where I designed furniture. And that's how everything triggered in that. And that's how from the journey from space to industrial design to furniture is how it went on.
So, sir, if in a short manner, if you have to tell us what's the difference between interior, furniture and space for the students who are listening to this podcast and are very new to it, how would you like to tackle that?
Okay, so space design is the master domain which will tackle interior, architecture and outdoor spaces as well. So interior design specifically looks at site-specific solutions. It's definitely over here what we look at it as, you get interior design courses all across, but at MIT Institute of Design, it's in the design domain. So problem solving, user-centric design, these are the keywords that we work with. And as I said, we provide very site-specific solutions for creating spatial experiences. So when you're talking about spatial experiences, all the products which go into the space, which are contextual to that, also come in. So that is where furniture becomes a major part of it. So we also handle lighting, lifestyle products and furniture. So that's how this entire domain is what we call.
Okay. Amazing. And any advice for any student who is in this whole area of choosing or getting into the idea of which is my interest area?
Okay. So I think definitely people who are seeking for design, they mainly don't know or they have very wrong notions about what specializations they want to take. So at this moment, I would say that just choose design, because the design journey itself makes you realize what your likings go toward. And if you're very keen in getting into interior design, I think getting aware of what is happening around. So what kind of things are sold in market, what kind of things people like, and visit different spaces. I think that much of basic knowledge is more than enough. Rest we take care of.
Amazing. And since you've just mentioned about, going out and seeing what attracts you, what makes you, feel more into the whole idea of interior or any other design specialization, what was your one project that was so fulfilling to you that you felt that maybe this can be called as one of my best projects so far?
uh, I typically handled residential interiors. I won't say that okay this was one of my base projects, but there was one exhibition which I did, and I think that exhibition design was something where I felt that okay, the experiential part of space is what I'm tackling. So that kind of satisfies me more, that how a user is traveling through a space, what kind of uh, visuals, what kind of space proportions he is experiencing. I think that triggers that I would say as the one of the best projects.
And as you just mentioned, you would call yourself, the what
Pediatric.
pediatrics of interiors.
No, pediatric of design, because I was handling. If I look at my academic portfolio also, no, I have designed toys. I have designed a water bottle for school children. I have designed, even my graduation project was for children who are affected by the Latur earthquake that happened during my time, and it was teaching them. It was a teaching aid for them on how uh, what is earthquake and what happens because of earthquake. So most of the project go into that domain only, and later projects also kind of I worked at NID in toy design department also. So those kind of this thing, and then getting into board games. I think
Exactly.
that entire thing is like
Yeah. So a lot of students had this question that how did board games and your interest, because when there
two
is like a
different.
selection of our open electives, board game is the one that gets finished like
Yeah.
the fastest, because everyone wants to be a part of that elective. So how did that come into place, and what's your idea of a board game design?
Okay.
Anything, any comment on
So
that?
I think when I was working at NID and later also through toys, I was looking at traditional toys which are played across the globe, and in that I came across few board games at that time. But I think the main transition happened when I'm also kind of very keen. I have keen interest into traditional Indian architecture. So temple architecture becomes one part of it. So while visiting certain temples, I found some scribblings on the floor. And I was wondering what the scribblings are. And later on, I figured out that these are the board games which these people have played traditionally. And that is how getting curious about what these board games were, what kind of board games are. So right now, even in my cabin, you will find traditional board games of all the civilizations that are there. Right from I have Royal Game of Ur, which is Mesopotamian civilization, to different Chinese board games, to European old board games, and of course Indian traditional board games that are there. So this is how that entire interest got triggered into. So this also is my topic of my research, which is I'm doing PhD into. So I'm looking at typically why these and another curiosity was how did these traditional board games survived over these years, because some of these games are still played. That was the trigger. So that was happening parallelly when I kind of encountered a session with Uday Atwankar sir of IDC, and he was talking about his journey in board games. And I think then it triggered ki, okay, design and these things would go parallelly. That's how I got into game design, game theory, and I was able to offer the elective first, I think in 2009, and that's how it kind of triggered, and my interest grew into it.
Oh wow.
Because it's very challenging for one to design a board game because you set the rules and you make someone play with that. So I
Yes,
think that's very
yes.
exciting part.
So, have you ever encountered a situation where similar board games came in front of you, the students who were in that elective? Because it's difficult to come up with new concepts every
Yeah.
now and then.
The briefs that I place are in such a way that either they are variations because the time of the course is very short. So it's very ambitious for to expect that someone will come up with a completely new game. So initial my all elective years went into creating variations. Later on, when I really understood the game theory part of it, is when my briefs started coming in where now they are coming up with a complete new gameplay. So still, in terms of game mechanics, they are using the same old game mechanics, but definitely the gameplay is different.
Okay.
So now I would say last 3-4 years is where I'm getting nice variations and completely new board games that are there.
Because you're playing with the gameplay
Yeah.
of the whole
So I
scenario.
haven't encountered a situation where it's a similar because initial briefs were there in such a way that they were variations. They're meant to be that way.
Yeah, yeah, makes sense, makes sense. So amazing, sir. Now we will dive a little into the bits of ISFD because there are a lot of questions from a lot of students. I'll just ask you the things that everyone
Right.
did. So, firstly, what qualities or what thing do you think is important in a student or in a person who is interested or wanting to pursue ISFD in MIT or maybe in any other college? What do you think are the core fundamentals should be present in that person?
Yeah, I think for any designer, observation skill is something that is important. But for someone who is getting into space design, I think he or she should be able to feel the spaces.
Okay.
So that perception of space, that when I'm standing at this thing, I'm able to sense through my entire body that okay, this space is good or bad or this is wow. So why it is wow. So I think that triggering that itself would kind of suffice half of the job. And as I said initially, also I think you should have that ability to work with materials, work with hand, because in practice also there are lots of decisions which you have to take on site. So you have to give quick in terms of giving solutions of alternative of working with certain materials. I think these are the few qualities I think I would raise to the top.
And what do you think are the challenges that the student face once they, start working on a project under the ISFD discipline?
Yeah, I think there is too much to handle.
There's too much of?
Too much to handle, because at the same time you are designing the products into the space, at the same time you are designing space, and the most difficult part of it is at the same time you have to represent the space in terms of the drawings which a client or a carpenter would understand. So I think that is the biggest challenge, that it's too much to handle into that. So but I think over the years the students develop those kind of capacities and the ability to work in that. But
Because
otherwise, in terms of problem solving and in terms of perception of spaces, I think visualization becomes sometimes challenge, because some students are good into it, sometimes are able to visualize spaces better. So that is the second challenge that I would put.
because I think one of the challenges that we as our as the students who are in ISFD being our friends, we see that firstly they don't have time. They
keep
don't
working all
have
the time.
They're always on the workshop. They're working. They're doing something or the other, and that is also a question that I had. Is there any way, any advice which you can give them on time management as well?
Okay.
Because there's so many things happening, as you said, so much to handle, so much to take care
There
of.
is so much to handle, definitely. Time management is the key. But I think we keep discussing in our department also that you sweat for 4 years over here and then over the life you will relax. So it might be that you want to relax for 4 years, then all the entire life you will sweat. Because the industry is challenging, is really challenging. It doesn't let you sit on the chair very peacefully, because at a time you are handling multiple projects. And what we prepare the students for is 2-3 years down the line, they have to start their own studio. So those are the challenges when they are managing 2-3 sites at the time. And if they have gone through this kind of a drill, I think the life becomes easier. So the alumni keep telling us, sir, at that time it was very difficult, but now we feel it was necessary.
That's amazing.
Yeah, but again, as I said, time management is the key, because in industry also, simultaneously you are handling, say, one project is in a finishing level, one project is just started, one project is somewhere you are having jig with the vendors or the client. So it's multitasking that is needed.
And as you mentioned that once the students they get into industry, it they expect a lot from you. So from a person who's just getting into industry, like the recent batch, like the batch who's just going to get their graduation project, any advice to them? We'll go into the specifics of it, but any advice to them on how to handle certain briefs that are given to them?
Yeah, I think one, they have to handle them with confidence because they have all the tool sets that is required. I think they have tested that when they went for the internships also. And I think this is the time where you need to create a niche into the industry because you can't be over ambitious during the graduation period because you're working under somebody or for next say 1 or 2 3 years you are working under somebody. But if you start creating niche and start be like a sponge, I think just absorb the way these things are, because academics in a way has limits. We can't give you everything in terms of how the office runs and things like that. So those are the things which you have not learnt in academics is something that you need to grasp over there. How to manage office, how to deal with vendors, and most difficult parts, how to deal with the client.
Yes. And any advice on choosing where to go and take your graduation project?
Yeah. So again, as I said, there is too much to handle, gives you a edge when you look at the industry, because with the kind of projects that you have done in ISFD, you can go into spaces. There are again different spaces of different complexities. So right from retail spaces, residential spaces to commercial and hospitality spaces is what you can get into. Then there are hardcore furniture studios and industries that are there. People have done their internships in lighting. I think this semester also there are 2 people who are doing it in lighting design. And I think then there are niche areas wherein it's in between space and furniture. For example, modular spaces, mobile spaces. I think people have worked in those areas also. And of course, one of the biggest area is craft design, where also our alumni have worked. They have done their graduation projects. They have their own studios who are dealing with that. And there are some people who are seeking things into that also. Those are the areas.
Okay. Lovely. And to any person who you have to explain, maybe in, let's say, like a crash course in ISFD, if you have to give it in a brief of what is the process of, from getting a brief from a person about whatever the requirement is to actually fulfilling that requirement and giving a tangible, concept out there.
Okay. So I think for space and furniture,
we can divide it. Let's
I
give
think
for
you take different
different
approaches. So for space design, I think understanding the user is very important. So if I have to compare our approach with approaches that typically architecture or interior decoration schools will follow, they will directly start with the layout, whereas we start by understanding the user.
Okay.
So I always tell my student that don't follow the standards blindly. So if you have a OTA which is of a certain height, it need not be. Understand your user. So if your user is taller or shorter, the kitchen OTA has to change according to that. So that kind of approach is what we take. Then we look at circulations, we take a look at the intangible aspect of it. So every space needs to say something. So what are the semantic attributes of the space? And then all these things get translated into the functional layout. Then of course detailing and then drawing representation. So that's a kind of a space design path that we follow. Whereas I think in terms of furniture, I think the first lesson that we give them is don't start by the statement that you are designing a chair. You're designing a seating system. When you say chair is one of the solutions. Okay. So I think with that kind of approach, again, understanding the space context is very important. So I think first initial time goes into, because your furniture might be specific to a space. It might be batch produced or it might be a very generic, which is say mass produced. Okay, so you need to understand that context. You need to understand the user needs, because at certain point there is a certain amount of problem solving that is happening. Maybe I don't have certain space to keep my stuff onto my furniture. So how do I include that? And then it goes to getting onto what we call as furniture configuration, getting into structural stability of the configuration, getting into materials and manufacturing processes. Then the drawings. That's how the process will be.
Okay, amazing. That I actually that there's a lot. I asked you this question because a lot of people out there don't understand what goes into the
Absolutely.
whole process of creating a tangible concept from ISFD.
So what you see in the showcase or whatever, whenever we showcase the furniture, is just the tip of the iceberg. There's a huge process
Yes,
which
correct,
goes behind
correct.
that.
There's a huge process.
Absolutely.
Yes, and now since we're talking about the outputs and stuff, there are a lot of questions related to the opportunities that are there in the industry, and how is the industry for ISFD out there, for MDIS and for BDIS actually.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think for both the places, industry has tremendous amount of work. I think during COVID also, during the pandemic, we felt that it will go down, but drastically it increased.
Okay.
Because people started demanding change in spaces because the work culture changed from going to the office to this thing, and that demanded changes in their interiors and demanded different kind of furniture. So as of now, if you also see the industry, see the exhibitions that are happening, I think there is tremendous amount of work that is going on, and I think shelter is one of the basic needs of human beings. So till human beings are there, shelter and the changes that are required are there. So the beauty of interior design is that you can take a very minimalistic approach or a very cost-effective approach to there is no upper limit. Okay, and there are lots of emerging trends which are coming into interiors. There are interesting blends. So people visit certain European countries, people visit certain, and they demand these kind of things. So that triggers, there are different architects, there are different designers who kind of give their flair into it. There's an amazing set of new materials which come into the industry. So it's a very dynamic palette that the designer every time has. Okay, and I think that's how the opportunities open up. So there is work, there is definitely work, but I'll put the reality that the graph is not steep in this thing. It's steady. And if you start on your own, then it's steep.
Yeah.
In terms of this.
Lovely. So I think we've had a lot of conversation on ISFD already, but there's also one important aspect attached to you, that you are the HOD which has been in the college for the longest, right? And you have seen college from his early years to now, the differences and everything that has taken place. So firstly, sir, I'll want to go into the culture of MIT ID. How has that changed from your early years to now?
It has changed a lot.
It has?
I think I was very fortunate to join in the very initial years of the institute. So there was an amazing leadership that we had. I think I was fortunate enough to be an associate faculty under people like H. Kumar Vyas sir, Dhiman sir, Arvind Merchant sir, Sanjay Jain sir, even Chakradev sir used to teach initially. So I have taken courses with him also. And every kind of interaction with them has been a learning. So students were passionate because design was new, and we wanted to make our stand in the institute. So everything quality was the thing that was looked after. So there were lots of repeats, there were lots of Fs that were there, and nothing below the quality was tolerated. I think that has changed a lot. Maybe because the numbers have increased, because definitely there are pressures otherwise in terms of commercial pressures also. So I'm not blaming the numbers entirely, but the industry has grown. The design education industry also has grown. But in terms of our faculty culture, I think our mentors, if you're planning certain assignment, they made us do that assignment initially, so that we understood what the student will go through this. Okay. I think this is the culture which I see now has kind of diminished. So the major change happened when we decided to go under a university, and I think the organic nature got into a very structured kind of nature, because university's kind of structure demands that. So that change in certain ways has come positively. In certain, there are certain advantages, there are certain disadvantages of that also. So that's how things are. But now, if I look at the students which we get, and if I compare it to the initial students we get, I think one passion is missing. Uh, I would say mediocrity is increased because students also say, ki, okay, this would work. Faculty also says that, okay, it would work. So that quality bar is kind of, if I compare it over there, slightly it has come down. Definitely, that's the change.
Okay. And I mean, as someone who has seen multiple generations, coming here and, going, how were, like, we have discussed about the passionate bit, but, in terms of the fun element that college used to have or now has, like, how were students as a person, like, personality wise, were different from the ones that are here right now?
Okay, some of my first batch students are faculty now over here. Okay, so I think again, as I said, everything was new and was to be established. So I think the main thing that was there, that it was thought over. So for example, the college function, Quasar, if it has to be done, what it should reflect. So there was a discussion on that. Okay, so everything was thought and done. Even the cultural things that we see in the foyer earlier and now. So there was a very nice thread of depicting the culture to someone who doesn't understand.
Okay.
Whereas now, if you look across all the culturals that are happening, there's a similar pattern. Okay, so the thought process behind that is somewhere that has changed, is what I feel.
The same.
But
the same thought process is repeating itself, maybe.
Thought process is repeating, or it's not given that much importance.
Okay.
Why we are doing this event for? Okay. But the positive side, I think there is tremendous amount of energy between this generation. I think it's oozing out, but it just needs to be channelized properly. But energy-wise, I see the graph going up, maybe.
Lovely. And since you have mentioned so much about the previous bits, any advice that you would want to give to your previous self, in terms of handling the college before, or maybe in terms of ISFD, anything?
Okay. I think in the initial years, there were lots of resistance and resistance to kind of adopting to this thing, the changes. And there was a designer ego, I think, and of course, there was a resistance to getting on a typical path of design research. So I think if I want to change one thing in me in past years, I think that is something that I should have got into design research, look at it more positively. So then many things would have streamlined properly.
Okay, lovely. And so since you have like a huge fan following, I mean, the whole ISFD is just the biggest cheerleader I've seen so far. They have sent in a lot of fun questions that they want me to ask you. So the first question is, what is the best moment you've had with the best batch?
Okay. I think the best moment with the best batch is there was an occasion when I went to another city and I was able to visit one of my alumni studio.
Oh, wow.
Okay, so when you see your students established into the industry, I think that is the best moment that any teacher can have. And I think with the current batch, or the current batches, I think whenever I see a complete prototype, I think that's the best moment. So in time, you are completing your prototype and you are able to justify it properly in the jury. That's the best moment.
Lovely. Amazing. And okay, so another question that they asked me was, how do you show up to college every day without taking a single leave?
Wow. I think the credit should go to my wife or my family. I think one thing I have realized, because I say 30 kilometers far from here, so 18 years I have traveled that much.
Yeah.
Every day.
That's a lot.
I think one thing I have learned is detach yourself.
Okay.
So when you are here, you are here. When you are there, you are there. I think that makes a clear distinction. So you don't mix up your family life and your this thing. So I think that makes you come up with a very fresh mind every day. I think that's how I put it.
That's a great advice, keeping your professional and personal life aside. Yes. Now, again, a controversial question, but what's your favorite batch in the recent years is what the students have asked.
I know who has asked this question. uh, I think I would say the batch, which is in the final year, definitely. Okay.
Oh.
Why? Because I think they have revived the ISFD traditions that had gone because of the pandemic. So before pandemic, also we used to have lots of fun, and we used to talk about that. We used to have sessions. We used to listen to music. We used to see movies in the class. And during the pandemic, during the online years, I think that thing kind of in spur and these things it used to happen. But this is the batch which made the entire wish list of all those things, and they made me do all these things. So I think that is how I put it.
That is so nice. That is really so
So
nice.
there's still one wish that is pending that will fulfill.
We'll get that soon.
Yeah.
Okay. And how is ISFD the most happening discipline? Which is something that I feel every discipline agrees to. So how is there so much love, bonding, and just something or the other is always happening in this small family?
Yeah. So one answer is because it's a small family. Because I can see the parallel disciplines having bigger numbers. I think it is difficult in a way to bond it together. I think the second thing that is there is me and Vasudha ma'am has been throughout ISFD all the years. So it's an entire alumni cross section that we know personally. That. And I think it's always work that keeps happening in the thing. So that is something that binds us together. So there are arguments which I think even most of the faculties, when you are handling the space project or the furniture project, it's a project which is done by student. It's a teamwork where faculty student work together. And I think that kind of binds it together. So we have a simple principle: काम के time काम, fun के time fun. That's it.
Lovely. And last question from the students is, which is the best IPL team and why?
Of course CSK. Of course CSK. Chennai Super Kings. Yeah.
But they've already mentioned about RCB, sir. They've asked,
RCB
why is it RCB?
No, RCB is never the team. Because I am a big fan of MS Dhoni. So I think initial years I used to put a poster of Dhoni when the IPL starts. Sometimes I have also put a poster saying that CSK zone, RCB do not enter. Okay, to that extent, because there were alumni with whom also we had this kind of thing. There are alumni with whom they were very Mumbai Indian fans, and there used to be a tussle. And RCB hasn't won a cup yet.
But no, the women IPL.
Yeah, women IPL I support RCB.
Yeah, they
RCB
won there.
Of course, women team I support RCB, but no chance. It's CSK. It always will be yellow.
Lovely.
And I'm very passionate about cricket. So
oh wow.
yeah,
Okay.
absolutely. So cricket watching mainly. So I think we have watched 2 World Cups in ISFD studio, but both the World Cup finals we have lost. One semi-final and 2. So now it's a jinx that don't watch the semi-final in ISFD studio. We lose.
Lovely, sir. Lovely. Okay. That's so nice. So have you played a cricket match with the ISFD batch?
In the
yet?
corridor, that was one of the wish
in the
lists.
corridor, yeah, the story we saw, yes.
That was one of the wish lists that was there. So initially we faculty used to play in the corridors. So I was telling them those stories. So then it kind of came back and
lovely.
I got out on 0.
So sweet. Okay, so now we are heading towards the end of the podcast. There are these 2 questions which I ask everyone on the show. First is, what do you think, sir, is the yellow in you? What is something in you that makes you different from everyone, that puts the spotlight on you?
Okay. I think other people will immediately point it out. I think there's tremendous amount of sincerity that is put onto work. And I follow process. So I'm very keen on to following a process. Output, I think, will evolve. Output does not matter. But if you follow the process steps properly, I think that's how I've been working. I think that's how my mentors also kind of taught me. And that's a yellow in me that I would say is there. And I think be sensitive. So being sensitive towards students, towards materials, towards spaces, I think has helped me a lot. That's how it will help.
Lovely. Being disciplined and sensitive both at the same time. And the last question would be, any lesson that you have learned throughout your whole journey, like be it in any direction, be it your education side, be it you educating people, be it the factor of your interest, your board games, your family life, anything, any three lessons that you learned throughout the whole throughout your whole journey.
Okay, I'll just put a background to it a bit, because I come from a very modest kind of a family background. So you would say that two faculty cabins combined at the bottom was my entire home. I have been born and brought up in a Vada for almost 26 years. Okay, so I think that kind of connects me with the cross section of the pyramid. I'm able to understand and work at a very grassroots level. At the same time, I can understand the needs of those things. So I think that is something that I've learned over the journey. So that makes you becoming very sensitive. I think the other part is, I think passion. So passion drives you well. Passion, when you're demotivated, there are ups and downs which come. I think passion is the only thing which kind of lifts you up. That is how I put it. And I think be very methodical, be true to yourself, because many times you work and you are not able to put up your work in front of someone that way, and someone else takes the credit or whatever that is. But somewhere it satisfies you from inside and it pays you well. I think that is what I have learned over my life.
Lovely, sir. I think this was one of the most wholesome podcasts I've had so far. And I feel a lot of people would learn a lot from this conversation that we had. Thank you so much for coming on
Thanks a
the
lot for calling
podcast.
me. It was a very interesting conversation that I had. And I could also recall some of my old days, my mentors in certain ways.
Yes, sir. So you've come a long way, definitely.
Absolutely.
And many more heights to touch, hopefully.
Thank you.
And yeah, thank you so much.
Thanks.
Thank you
Thanks
so
a lot.
much.
Thanks.
It's a wrap now. Thank you.